So if you had to break down the rebuilding process into sub-projects, what would those sub-projects be?
So the rebuilding process, I would say, is, I think I've broken it down into about five total sections.
What was that reaction?
He's holding up three.
I thought it was three, because that's what I did.
So you were thinking deck, wind motor, and
bellows system.
But I guess taking apart and putting them back.
Yeah, so I go just a step further just because it's easier. Yeah, I guess you could call it auxiliaries in the piano. The top deck, which would be spool box, transmission, wind motor. But if you wanted to break those down into even more steps, that would be 8 steps. Because you can treat, so this as one unit, rebuilding your wind motor. So that's one. We'll break it down further. So this is step 1, your wind motor. Step 2, these aren't in order either. Your transmission is 1 unit. The spool box is another unit. The spool box includes the tracker mechanism because this is all integrated into both sides of it. So your tracking mechanism controls what position the spool is in to keep it aligned with these holes. So that's this thing's whole purpose, is to keep the scroll aligned with this. So I consider this all 1 unit. So that's 3. 4 would be the valve block system and attached striker pneumatics. So that whole chunk. 5, am I on 5? 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 is the feeders over there on the table, the whole wind supply, vacuum supply. And then I guess I would call 6 the expression units, all of the auxiliary, the sustain, the soft, the loud. So I'd call that basically 6 pieces.
The most delicate?
Most delicate and time-consuming being this one, the valve block, all the striker pneumatics. That's the heart and soul of the piano.
Is there a way to test each of these individual to ensure that it is sealing?
Yeah. So what you can do without this system sort of assembled, the way I test these valves in this style to make sure that they are working is I will go through and I will tape all of these exposed holes because we don't need the striker pneumatics yet. And then I will attach the vacuum supply to this side so that we're basically simulating the fully working piano. We've just stripped down everything in a sense. And you can go through and you can tape off all of these holes. And so as you do this, you've sealed the holes, the signal holes, you've sealed all of these. So these valves should be resting and sealing downwards. A lot of the times I will take a listening tube and you can listen around these valve seats and you can hear a hiss from that lower seal if it's not sealing all the way. So it's basically just a piece of rubber tubing like this that I take and I put one end in my ear. It's almost like a stethoscope. And you set the other end down right next to it and you can hear a little if it's not sealing. Because this is very sensitive when it's directly plumbed straight into your ear.
So this is as you're pumping it with your feet.
Yeah, so ideally you would have like the electric vacuum motor, that comes out of the Grands, that's just constantly supplying wind pressure quietly to test like this. Because you want to be able to focus solely on testing the valves instead of trying to pump air into the system and here at the same time. Okay. And you can do that with a vacuum motor too, like an independent vacuum. It's just good to have like a way to regulate the pressure from a vacuum because it sucks so much harder than a piano usually does, like a shop vac. And we can talk about that another time because it is pretty easy to set that up. And so then I will go through and I will listen to all of those. And then what I will then do is I will then start pulling up this tape 1 note at a time, which will then trigger the pouch down there to pull up and start sealing this top side. And so once that's done, this chamber is under suction because now the valve is upwards. I can then do the same thing with the listening tube and I can listen around this valve seat to see if there is an air leak around that seat as well. Because now the valve is being pushed upwards, I can listen to this seal. When it's downwards, I can listen for the other seal.
Either way, you're listening around the perimeter here.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when these are sealed, it's in the
down position.
in the down position.
Mm-hmm. And then as you pull them open, it's the same as the piano trying to actuate, so then it pulls that up, and you can test that top valve seat. And here for imperfections.
It's in the down position because it's sucking, and so it's wanting
And
to.
so it's pulling
pulling
those
that
valves.
down.
Mm-hmm. So it's trying to pull air through all 88 of
And
these.
then when you pull this, that's simulating a hole in the tracker bar.
Mm-hmm. And that's puffing that leather pouch up and pushing that valve to seal in the other position. Okay. And since this is sealed, that is the only place air can escape. Because this chamber is, either communicates out this hole or this hole.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Otherwise, it would want to be actuating the striker pneumatic.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a good way to test that.
And you can have all 88 of these unsealed? Or 84 or whatever?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the other benefit of the vacuum system is it pulls, more volume typically than the bellows will. And so you can actuate all of them at the same time.
Okay.
Just fine. And if you do get concerned, if you're not getting, depending on the model and how well air can travel down the model, you can just retape this half and then start again down that side. So you can customize it if you're losing too much pressure to be able to tell.
Okay. And that's your final test to ensure that you've done a proper job of rebuilding that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. When you go through that rebuilding, if you rebuild these valves, top to bottom, you want to go through that process very thoroughly. Where these are built, you're just checking for cleanliness. You can basically just rush through it here where the really bad ones are. Like this one here is circled in crayon. I noticed that earlier. So that tells me that someone previously thought that there was an issue there. So pay attention here. Really do good diagnostic work on this section. Make sure that valve is operating properly. Mm-hmm. So sometimes old technicians will give you clues. Tell you where to spend your time, what to look for. Mm-hmm. But not often. Often they'll just make a mess of things. Depends on who it was and how good they were.
They fix it.
Yeah. On the Conway piano, I found, I think, about 12 notes on both sides just completely masking taped over to shut them up because they wouldn't work or hold air anymore. So they just took some tape and said, well, they don't want to fix it, so we're just going to cover it and disable all that. Whatever, who cares?
Interesting.
There was this tube right here that I think that controls the pedal.
Oh, yeah, that someone shoved a dowel into.
Yeah, it was completely gone. I had to re-drill a hole into it to make the space for the tube.
Someone took this pedal sustain right here because the pedal sustain stopped working. So they just took a wooden dowel, jammed it in there, and then sanded it flush to keep it from working.
And then paint over it to make it seem like it was not there.
So you get some fun little...
So when you look in the back, there's an extra tube coming out, but when you look in the front, there's nothing.
There's nothing.
So I had
then you had to do
find the
some...
wood thing and then pull it out.
Oh, interesting.
There are some technicians out there.
Unique ways of fixing, I guess.
Yeah, unique patches. Sometimes that's all a customer will let you do, so you can't harp on them too hard, but
Sure.
Anyway, fine balance. Okay, any other questions?